Welcome, everyone. Today, we're diving straight into the heart of the corporate conscience. We're going to unpack exactly how companies operate in today's world. We'll start with the internal mechanics, corporate governance, then move into the moral compass of business ethics, and finally, reach outward to explore corporate social responsibility. It's a huge topic, so let's get right into it. Here's a quick look at the roadmap for our explainer today. We're covering the profit versus purpose dilemma, the foundations of corporate governance and ethics in strategic management. After that, we'll clearly define corporate social responsibility, look at some real-world CSR action, and wrap up by answering the ultimate question: does being good pay? Starting with Section 1, the profit versus purpose dilemma, the classic corporate conflict.
Okay, let's dive into this. For literally decades, businesses have wrestled with a pretty fundamental debate. Is a company just a piece of property that exists solely to generate cash? Or is it an actual social entity? Every single day, managers face this precarious balancing act. They have to weigh complex, human, ethical considerations right against the relentless, high-pressure pursuit of profit. It used to be that prioritizing one meant sacrificing the other, but modern strategy? It's all about figuring out how to balance those scales.
Moving to Section 2, foundations of corporate governance, the structural blueprint. Before any company can even attempt to balance those scales we just talked about, it needs a rock-solid internal structure. That is corporate governance. It's the entire system of laws, customs, and procedures used to actually run a firm. Think of it kind of like the ultimate operating system for a business. It's what balances the economic goals with the social ones, ensuring power is distributed properly across the board, the management, and the shareholders. Without it, things fall apart pretty quickly. It's honestly a lot like building a house. You wouldn't build a mansion on a swamp, right? A company relies on three structural pillars of governance: transparency, accountability, and fairness. When these pillars are sturdy, they keep the roof from caving in. And in the corporate world, a caved-in roof usually looks like massive financial scandals, fraud, and catastrophic ethical failures. Which brings us to Section 3, ethics in strategic management, the moral compass. So, if governance provides the hard rules, ethics provides the guidance on how to act within those rules. These are the core moral principles that help managers decide what's genuinely fair or unfair on a day-to-day basis. And here's the absolutely crucial takeaway. Just doing the bare minimum required by the law, that doesn't cut it anymore. Ethics isn't about scanning a rule book to figure out a loophole or see what you can get away with. It's that internal compass that points true north, especially when the rule book is completely silent. Let's move up to Section 4, defining corporate social responsibility, the pinnacle of corporate conscience. To really appreciate how much our thinking has evolved, we need to contrast two totally different viewpoints. On one hand, you have Milton Friedman's traditional view from the 1970s. He famously argued that spending company money on social causes was essentially stealing from the shareholders. Seriously, his stance was that a manager's sole job was to boost shareholder wealth. But then contrast that with Archie Carroll's contemporary view, which says businesses have deep obligations that go way beyond just economics. They must fulfill social responsibilities too. Going from that pure property mindset to a social entity mindset is a massive game-changing shift in how we define business success. Carroll actually broke this down into a hierarchy of 4 distinct responsibilities. First is economic. Look, a firm has to make a profit just to keep the lights on, right? Second is legal. It has to follow the law of the land. Those first 2, mandatory, non-negotiable. But true CSR requires stepping up to the next level. Level 3 is ethical, doing what society morally expects of you, even if it's not codified in law. And finally, the highest tier is discretionary, actively stepping out and bettering the community through philanthropy. You build it from the ground up, secure the base, then reach for the top. Nowadays, a comprehensive CSR approach is practically a living, breathing ecosystem. It isn't just some pet project isolated in the HR department. It's a fully integrated system. We're talking about simultaneously reducing environmental impacts, actively engaging the community, and putting actual human beings at the very center of corporate development. A truly responsible firm weaves all these intersecting dimensions together into a self-regulating machine that impacts every corner of the public sphere. Up next is Section 5, Real-World CSR Action, Theory in Practice. So, what does this actually look like when the rubber meets the road? Let's rapid fire through some of the biggest players in the world. Pfizer is actively targeting healthcare access for mothers and children globally. Johnson & Johnson is heavily investing in alternative energy and making sure people have access to clean water. Starbucks is literally changing lives with incredibly diverse hiring programs, specifically focusing on refugees and veterans. And Google? They're pouring billions into renewable energy and making their buildings totally sustainable. Doing good isn't a fringe, feel-good idea anymore. It's a core strategic imperative for these giant corporations.
Now, as much as we love the success stories, we have to view this objectively. There is a very real, very vocal sociological critique out there. Some argue that CSR can sometimes just be window dressing, basically a slick PR stunt to preempt government regulation or a risk management trick to buy capitalist legitimacy without making any genuine systemic changes. It's a sobering thought, right? It reminds us that true corporate social responsibility takes deep systemic commitment, not just a flashy marketing campaign.
Let's tackle Section 6, Does Being Good Pay? The business case for ethics.
So here is the million-dollar question. If a company pours all this time, effort, and money into ethics and CSR, does it actually help the bottom line? Well, the evidence points to a resounding yes. Michael Porter coined this as strategic CSR. It's all about finding that exact sweet spot where an activity gives the company a competitive edge while also creating positive social change. It boosts a firm's reputation, secures public trust, which is huge, lowers long-term costs, and draws in conscious consumers. And maybe the most critical fact, there is zero hard evidence that shareholders are actually disadvantaged by a company acting responsibly. It's quite literally a win-win.
We've covered a ton of ground in this explainer today, moving from the rigid structural pillars of governance all the way up to the strategic, real-world advantages of CSR. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with one profound, slightly uncomfortable question based on our sources. Are you going to be a values leader or a values laggard? It's incredibly easy to sit back and point fingers at unethical executives, but whether you're a junior employee, a manager, an investor, or just a consumer voting with your wallet, you simply cannot expect others to be good stewards if you aren't out there leading by example. Thanks for joining me, and I hope this gave you a completely new perspective on the true power of purpose in business.